Yes.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. We're starting Genesis chapter 38. And I didn't bother to look and see how many. There's 30 verses. So I think we could each take 5 verses. Julia and Fred, why don't we start with you?
Judah and Tamar. About this time, Judah left home and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hira. Here he saw a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shula, and he married her. When he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and he named the boy Er. When she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, and she named him Onan. And when she gave birth to a third son, she named him Shelah. At that time of Shelah's birth, they were living in Kesub.
In the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn son to marry a young woman named Tamar. But was a wicked man in the Lord's sight, so the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to brother Onan, "Go and marry Tamar, as our law requires of the brother of a man who has died. You must produce an heir for your brother." But Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his own heir. So whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. But the Lord considered it evil for Onan to deny a child to his dead brother. So the Lord took Onan's life too.
All right. Don and Elaine?
Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Go back to your parents' home and remain a widow until my son Shelah is old enough to marry you." But Judah didn't really intend to do this because he was afraid Shelah would also die like his 2 brothers. So Tamar went back to live in her father's home. Some years later, Judah's wife died. After the time of mourning was over, Judah and his friend Hira and Adullamite went up to Tamnah to supervise the shearing of this sheep. Someone told Tamar, "Look, your father-in-law is going up to Tamar to shear his sheep." Tamar was aware that Shelah had grown up, but no arrangements had been made for her to come and marry him. So she changed out of her widow's clothing and covered herself with a veil to disguise herself. Then she sat beside the road at the entrance of the village of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. Judah noticed her and thought she was a prostitute since she had covered her face.
All right. Cherry and Ann?
16.
So we stopped. Want me to do this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So he stopped and propositioned her. "Let me have sex with you," he said, not realizing that she was his own daughter-in-law. "How much will you pay to have sex with me?" Tamar asked. "I'll send you a young goat from my flock," Judah promised. "But what will you give me to guarantee that you will send the goat?" she asked. "What kind of guarantee do you want?" he replied. She answered, "Leave me your identification seal and its cord and the walking stick you are carrying." So Judah gave them to her. Then he had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. Afterwards, she went back home, took off her veil, and put on her widow's clothing as usual. Later, Judah asked his friend Hira, the Adullamite, to take the young goat to the woman and to pick up the things he had given her as his guarantee. But Hira couldn't find her.
All right, now Jerry and Hannah.
Then he asked the men of the place, saying, "Where is the harlot who was openly by the roadside?" And they said, "There was no harlot in this place." So he returned to Judah and said, "I cannot find her." Also, the men of the place said, "There was no harlot in this place." Then Judah said, "Let her take them for herself, lest we be shamed. For I sent this young goat, and you have not found her." And it came to pass about 3 months after that Judah was told, saying, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. Furthermore, she is with child by harlotry." So Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." When she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, "By the man to whom these belong, I am with child." And she said, "Please determine who these are, the signet and cord and staff."
Judah recognized them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I would not give her to Shelah." And he did not sleep with her again. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. The midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said, "This one came out first." But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out, and she said, "So this is how you have broken out." And he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came, and his name was Zerah.
Okay. Well, a lot happening here.
It sure did.
Just your perfect family, you know.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
They
Yeah, what
just
a perfect
continue to
family.
deceive.
The perfectly sinful family.
Yeah.
So is there anything that stands out?
A lot of chicanery going on there.
There sure is. That
Hmm.
deceitfulness just kept on going generation after generation.
It never quits.
Doesn't
It
seem
sure
like it.
is. Um,
I wonder why this was put in the middle of, like, it interrupts the story of Joseph.
Mhm. I know that when I was looking at the commentaries, this is kind of out of what do you want to call it, sequence with what happened. This is actually before Joseph gets sold into slavery. So this is kind of talking about Judah when he was a younger man. And so this is kind of a review of Judah's life before the whole idea or before the whole thing of Joseph being sold. So this is this takes place before that. So I don't know whether they put that in there as a kind of a, I don't know, a relief from this or a suspension of the story of Joseph. But yeah, I'm not sure why they put that there, why they put it in that sequence. So
is um I'm can you tell me again which one is Judah?
Was he one of the brothers to Joseph?
It was
yeah, well, no, he's yeah, he's one of Joseph's brothers. Yeah, he's one of the older brothers or the older sons of
and
Jacob.
what was his name before Judah? His name Judah.
No, he was named Judah.
Yeah, he was
always.
always Judah.
Oh yes, okay. Yeah,
He was one of the older brothers.
yes.
Sounds like a good one too.
Yeah. Well,
Right, yes.
it said that he moved and to into the Canaanite area and married a Canaanite woman. Was he supposed to do that?
No.
I bet he wasn't.
No.
Well,
Jacob, matter of fact, Jacob kind of went out of his way to try to make sure that they did pick Canaanite women. But yet
Yeah.
Judah but Judah went ahead and did that. And it says that he had 3 boys. And they were really good
Yeah.
boys too, right?
Probably not.
What his
No.
oldest?
Well,
What was the
let's see.
character of his oldest?
Well, it said he was wicked.
He was wicked.
Mhm.
Yeah,
In verse 7,
was to
was a wicked man.
marry
What?
Tamar.
Yeah, it said that he was a wicked man in the Lord's sight. He must have been
Yeah.
pretty wicked for God to take his life.
Yeah.
And then his brother Onan, he
Yeah.
was a pretty nice guy too, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
seemed like it was.
He was selfish.
Yep. What was his problem with taking on his brother's wife and continuing his legacy, his brother's legacy? What was wrong with that?
He wanted his own legacy.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm not sure. Why did he not want to make her pregnant?
Well, I think like Julia said that he was kind of selfish. He knew that everything that he did was going to be, he wasn't going to get credit for it. Because this, whatever his accomplishments, it was for his brother's sake. And wasn't really into that. He wanted to do things for his own credit. So he didn't have much of a choice, and I don't think he appreciated that. So the only thing he could control was not getting her pregnant. And what did the Lord think of that?
Not so good.
Wasn't happy.
No.
So he took Onan's life also, the Lord
Yep.
did.
Yep. So how would you like to be Shelah? You're next up when you're old enough.
Say it again.
I said, how would you like to be Shelah? You're next up when you get old
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, you're next up. Okay, your turn.
Your 2 brothers have died before you. You're next.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you
Okay,
can
get
imagine
ready.
that's going through Judah's mind too. And it's interesting because in the commentaries it said that Judah was under the assumption, wrongfully, that all of this was Tamar's fault. Tamar was cursed or whatever because, 2 of his sons who were with her suddenly died. And so he had a little bit of prejudice against Tamar. She was a Canaanite woman and 2 of his sons were died being married to her. And so he wasn't about to let Shelah be the next victim. So he made the excuse that, well, wait till he's a little older.
Yeah.
And of course, a few years go by and he's plenty old enough. But does Judah make any arrangements?
No.
Nope. And in the meantime, Judah's wife dies. So, yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. It seems like just a real happy family.
Yeah, So after this, he's done mourning. He goes off to do some shearing of the sheep, and who finds out that he's in the area?
With, brother's
Tamar.
widow.
Yeah, Tamar.
Yeah.
Tamar was sent home because well, basically, you go home till Shelah's old enough, and then I'll call you, which of course he never intended on doing.
Yeah.
But Tamar is fully aware that he did not fulfill his promise, and evidently was fully aware that he never intended on it.
Yeah.
So here's where the deception starts to take place. What does she decide to do?
Trick him.
Yeah. Disguise herself and become a prostitute along
Right.
the road.
In some ways, you have to kind of wonder what did she know about Judah that Judah would even be susceptible to this temptation?
No, she doesn't, I don't, she thinks she had any way of knowing. She is just living dangerously.
Yeah. So you kind of wonder about Judah's reputation.
Oh
Right,
my,
yeah, we'll just,
this
I guess it
whole,
was a common thing that if.
the whole
Yeah.
it's
story.
along the
That's
road,
very
I guess.
common.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine them thinking this was Christ-like to behave like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I mean, he's kind of opposed his father on a lot of different things. And of course, we see what his character is like when with his brother. So Judah's character was not really well developed just yet.
No,
And so we have this deception going on. He obviously doesn't really have much to pay her with right now. So
No.
if he promises something, I'll get you a goat.
a goat, yeah.
Yeah. But in the meantime, what does she ask for?
Um,
Or guarantee that he would
Yeah.
actually follow through.
Right,
Because it's a little hard to take back the sex if you didn't pay out.
right.
Shouldn't
Yeah,
figure
it
out
was
how to
a
do that.
So what does she acquire from
identification
him?
seal.
So
with
she gets his identification seal and his walking
Yeah.
stick.
Walking
And
stick.
and a cord.
Right. They said that it was probably like a little roll, and it was on the cord. It was like a necklace that he wore, and it was an identification of who he was. It was almost like you would sign a check. It was
Yeah.
kind of something like that, that if you went to purchase something, this was your identification to be able to say that you were good for the money or whatever. And so she took that in his staff. And of course we see after that he asks his friend Hira to go pay her off, but he couldn't find her. And in the meantime, she became pregnant.
Yeah,
Do you think that was planned?
Yes,
From these stories, it sounds like all you had to do is to have sex once and you were pregnant.
That's true.
They were
They
really
were very
fertile
virile,
people.
weren't they? Very fertile.
Yeah,
Fertile Myrtle.
yeah.
It's interesting that Judah didn't really go hunt down the signet ring. You would think, like, if it's our signature nowadays or something we sign, we would be going after it. We would want that back.
Right.
And I've
Sure.
always understood that those signet rings were very,
Well, it really wasn't a ring. It was like
Or
a
whatever.
roll, right? Yeah.
that it
Maybe
was.
they could have another one made easy.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons he wanted that back. So that's why he was sending his friend to go here, take the goat and pay her off and get my stuff back.
But you
Yeah.
didn't hear him after that. It was kind of like, well, okay, we tried.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So if that was his signature thing, I guess I'm thinking of like the king's ring. You wouldn't necessarily want that family ring.
You wouldn't want it all out there, right? Yeah. So
But he didn't, he says we'd be the laughing stock of the village if we went back again to look for her. So I think he was more afraid of what people would say.
right.
And what they would find out he did was
Mhm.
more important than that signature.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Don.
Yeah.
Brad, just talk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, say it.
Don, I think Judah's problem was that he had too much oregano.
Yes.
Oregano, oregano.
Oregano, yes. And he could have had, he could have had a whole bottle instead of a half a bottle of old granddad too.
It sounds like by some of the things they did, boy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Judah finds out through somebody that his daughter-in-law is pregnant.
Yeah,
She's supposed to still be in mourning from the loss of her, well, two husbands.
yes.
And what's Judah's reaction?
Well, it says bring her out and let her be burned.
Well, just keep the
Was
thing that gave
Yeah,
her.
you keep the stuff.
was
Yeah.
burning a fit punishment?
Well, he probably didn't think he did that. He didn't make her pregnant. He didn't know until
think he
until
was-
she come up with the seal.
If he
Right.
thought that Tamar was the one that was causing all the problems earlier, he was
Right,
looking for an excuse to get rid of her.
right. And
Sure.
it's interesting because burning was never part of a death, of an execution that God ever approved of.
No.
It was supposed to be stoning. So why was he wanting to burn her?
Get rid of all evidence.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was excessive. So this was an excessive punishment that Judah was putting on her. And it's interesting that his anger against her was directed towards, I don't know if it's kind of like burning a witch at the stake, that she shamed the family by not staying in mourning.
I think also, Todd, that he was upset with her because she made him look like a fool. She played him.
But he didn't know that.
But
He
yeah,
didn't know about it yet.
He didn't know it when he said that.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't?
Mm-mm.
Uh-huh.
No, it's not until Judah sends somebody to go get her and to
Yeah.
drag her out so that they could burn her.
Yeah.
What was her reply to the person that came to get her?
The man who owes these things made me pregnant. Look closely, the seal and the cord and the walking stick are these. So she's got evidence.
Right. And what does Judah say in verse 26?
She's more righteous than I am.
That's right.
Yep. Basically, he's been discovered.
He's caught.
His deeds have come to light. And
Mm.
what can he say?
So
And
why
Judah
did
never
he
slept with Tamar again.
Right.
I think-
What?
I think it was just his way of saying, like, you know,
Well, he broke his promise. And in many ways, Tamar's this whole scheme by Tamar was her way of forcing him to fulfill his promise.
Yeah,
Because what she needed was a seed from the family of Judah. Her first husband wasn't able to do it. Second husband wasn't willing to do it. So
Right.
she was going to get it from the family one way or the other.
there you go.
And
I'll show
well,
you.
that meant her own father-in-law, she was going to do it.
Yeah,
there's also too, like, culturally, like, at this time, after her father died, she would have been left with nothing.
Right.
that's right. That's
So-
right.
So she would have been left without protection, without a home. But now, through this, she was guaranteed protection through the family. She now had sons or an heir to then take care of her.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, though it was selfish, she was trying very hard to secure her own future
Right. Yeah.
because it had been taken from her.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And I think
Mm-hmm.
in many ways that's why Judah said she was more righteous than he was,
sure.
because he did not keep his word. And it said that they were husband and wife from that point on because of this.
It
But it
does?
says, yep, but it says here specifically that he never slept with her again.
Yeah,
It's probably evidentially that she never had any children after this.
Where does it say they were husband and wife?
Well, it says it in the commentaries.
Oh,
So
So then she comes up with twins.
yes, she does.
Yeah.
And what's the significance of one of these twins?
Well,
The first one first had a string
Yeah,
on it, and then somehow or another the other one slipped out ahead of it, right? Did I
Right.
understand that right?
uh-huh.
Right?
Zara, the first one, stuck its hand out, and of course the what do you call
Put a
them?
string around it.
The midwife put a string on it so that they would say this was the first one, but he went back in and the other one came out first.
Hmm.
And so they named him Perez. And what do we know about Perez?
that's our neighbor.
We have a neighbor
We
named
have a
that.
neighbor named Perez.
Well, we know that Perez is in the line of the Messiah, Jesus.
Oh,
Oh,
boy.
Yeah.
So is he Spanish?
Does sound Spanish, doesn't
our neighbors are.
it? But it's interesting, you know, when we were studying this morning in our lesson study about trials that we go through and some suffering that we go through.
Right, the crucibles.
Yeah, the crucibles. And it's interesting because out of this whole mess, what does Romans 8:28 say?
all things work together. good.
Things work together good.
Yes. So even though this whole mess was caused by human error, by human selfishness, and all that, one of the results is we have one of the descendants of Jesus, which is Perez.
Wow.
Yeah.
Out of all this mess.
Uh-huh. And what's the significance of that as far as Jesus is concerned, being in the lineage of all of this deception?
I don't know.
What would it have meant through history if Jesus would have came through
Yeah.
through a perfect line?
Yeah, we would know we could never do it.
Right.
That's right.
Yep.
It-
So we have no excuse because he had no excuse.
yeah.
He was not born of royalty. He was just common. And his own ancestor, as we learn even later, his ancestry didn't really get any better.
No.
But it's just interesting that God used these fallible, people in order for it to be in the line of bringing in the Messiah, the Savior.
Amen.
And I think that's encouraging for us. Not that any of us mess up, I'm sure, right?
You're right.
Right.
No,
We're
no,
pretty
not
perfect.
me.
But I think the lesson can be learned that even when we mess up, God can do something with our life, and that He
Praise the
can turn
Lord.
things around and make beautiful things.
Praise the Lord.
Yes, definitely. Is there anything else that you noted from this story?
Well, with all the sex going on, I guess it was Abraham that said, God told Abraham that your descendants will be the sand of the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stars of the sky.
Uh-huh.
Guys sure tried to help out, didn't they?
Yeah, I guess they did. They were doing their part,
They
huh?
did help out.
Yeah.
They did.
Well, if that's it, we'll go ahead and stop our recording.
Thank you for joining us at our prayer and Bible study session as we journey through the Bible one chapter at a time. We realize that you might have some questions or comments on the things that we discussed today. And if you do, please feel free to fill out the form below Also, if you would like to have your own Bible, please fill out the form below and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next time at our prayer and Bible study session.